Welcome to the show, everybody. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are, whether you're in Mongolia or Montana. I don't know if we have listeners in Mongolia. Anyhow, look, if you're new to the show, welcome. I'm glad you found it. What we do on this show is we uncover what it takes to win, to put together a successful real estate business, a company. And look, here, you know why I do this show? I want to dig in. I want to find the tips, the tricks, the hacks that these people have used to become number one in their market so that you guys can listen to it, understand it, get it, and you know what? Boom, go replicate it. Really quickly, I hope that you're not going to want to miss future episodes like this one. So what I'd love you to do, go to our site, superagentslive.com. Sign up, download my free book. We have a free membership site. Good stuff there. Go join. Okay. Now look, today's episode, today's guest is one of those ones. He's not, as you guys would say, a real person because he's doing 400 deals. But I can promise you that what we cover in this episode will be helpful. Now I can say it I'm going to tell you what we talk about, but overall, the main thrust of what we talk about is building a cloud-based brokerage. So we get into every single tool this guy uses. And we literally, there's like, I'm looking at him right now. There's like 10 tools that he uses. And we talk about not only the tools that he uses, is how he uses them, how his team uses them. Here's some of the stuff we talk about. He's a younger guy, 34, 35, went from corporate marketing to real estate. And we talk about marketing a little bit, and marketing in the real estate world. And we uncover or I don't know, I guess cover a little bit, the difference between a marketing type business or a sales focused business. Now, look, we know we need to make sales at the end of the day, but how do you get there? Again, you could, it's either marketing for inbound calls or prospecting with outbound calls. All right. We talk most of this, 85% of this conversation is about systems. Building systems that work, why you should build systems, why, we talk about building systems to make sure and not only put out fires, make sure those fires don't erupt. So building systems to be proactive and why good systems are the foundation of having a business that you can literally just pick up and move to another city. Okay. And again, there's tons of tools that we talk about. Now, I will tell you, the last, 20 minutes of this, we got sidetracked. As we started talking about task management, processes, and systems, we kind of stumbled onto the fact that he has created a startup. And so I'm a startup guy. So we spent some time talking about how he did the startup, how he created the technology that he did create. Now, if that doesn't interest you, and if you have no interest in ever launching your own startup side business, then don't listen to the last 20. If you do, I think you will find it fascinating. Welcome to Super Agents Live. This is the one place where you can come and hear the most successful people in real estate. You'll hear how these super agents built their businesses, how they stay productive, and how they stay motivated. Who am I? My name's Toby Salgado, and I made my first $1 million in real estate. Yeah. And I'm your host for the next 30 minutes while we talk to yet another amazing real estate entrepreneur. Stay tuned.
Let's go! Yeah!
Okay, hey, listen, as you guys know, all this content is brought to you by real estate radio experts. You guys want to level up, get listings, go to realestateradioexperts.com, fill out the getting started sheet, and let's chat. On Twitter, hashtag for the show is Unpack That Idea. My Twitter handle at Super Agents Live. Love to meet you out there. All right, let's get to it. I'm thrilled to welcome Brett Kepler. Hey, Brett, thanks for taking the time out.
No problem. I appreciate the opportunity.
So listen, Brett, I've given the audience sort of just a nuts and bolts overview of what you're doing, but and I want to talk about your business. I want to talk about how your model has changed. I know that you're the founder and owner of your brokerage, which is Trio Real Estate. But before we get to all that, tell us a little bit about you personally, Brett.
Sure. So, let's see. Personal background: I'm married. I have 2 kids, with one coming any time between now and 2 weeks from now. So that's exciting. Just trying to figure out how to balance, the existing real estate company, the family, the new business opportunity, which we might talk about. I hail from north of Indianapolis over in Indiana, so I've always kind of lived in the Midwest. Spent 3 years in the corporate world where I thought I was going to someday become CEO of a large company, and quickly got out of the business to get into real estate, and over the years have developed more of a corporate culture just in my small firm. So it's kind of funny as I'm cycling away from all that control back into the need for all that control. But I'm 34 years old and have kind of been pushing through this industry pretty hard over the past 9 years.
Got it. Okay, so let's talk about your corporate background for a minute. So
Sure.
Where were you and what did you do?
Sure. So I graduated in 2003 with a marketing finance degree. Ended up going and working for a marketing firm downtown. It was kind of a sales and marketing gig, and it was a News Corp subsidiary. Had a lot of upside to it, but it was a New York-based company. Hired a lot of young kids, worked them pretty hard, and then there'd be some relocation involved and that sort of thing. But being in Cincinnati, there's P&G that's here that a lot of other businesses kind of feed off of. So the company I was with was one that was working pretty actively with them. But it was kind of interesting because there was out of our parent company and our company's headquarters was in New York, so it was very much a suit and tie sort of understanding, and then you come to the Midwest, you work with some of these companies, and they're much more casual. So there was consistently kind of a clash, and for me, I never really understood the strictness of the dress code or the strictness of all the corporate meetings and the quarterly reviews and everything that just seems so kind of just out of whack with really being productive. So it took only about 3 years before I decided that I couldn't take it anymore.
Got it. And look, my background's a little bit similar to that. So again, you graduated with marketing finance degree. What specifically did you do at this company? Were you on the marketing side, the finance side, or on the sales side?
So it was marketing and sales. So what we did is we would sell, if you've ever been to the grocery store, advertisements within there on carts on, those little boxes that spit out coupons, coupons in the Sunday Circular. So it had the word marketing in the name of the company, but it was really sales. The one thing I did learn, out of that company was that, with all this data, you can really tell any story that you want to, just a matter of how you spin it. So, I kind of came away from that. That did translate into real estate sales where, I did see that, hey, with all this different data, we're part marketing and we're part sales, and it just depends on which side you want to lean more heavily, and whether we're doing it based on simply a financial return or whether, the services that we're providing are bringing brand awareness, or it's just a matter of, picking the right story and showing there's an upside to pretty much everything we do.
Right. And I'll tell you something. So you came to this industry with a giant advantage over most everybody else. So you had a sales background, you have a marketing background. I mean, what are some of the things that you took and from this big corporate culture and brought it into your, startup essentially, that worked?
So, there's a couple things. I can talk about what I did bring and what I did not bring.
Yeah.
The one thing that I did bring, and I remember this pretty specifically, was I was, I think, a little cocky when I first got into business. I thought that I knew what was going on. I didn't really understand tenure. I still don't really understand tenure. But, in the mid-2000s, the market was kind of all over the place and people were getting laid off. So I saw a lot of people getting fired and people sticking around that I thought were really useless, and the young, bright minds being let go. So I kind of had a little bit of a bitterness towards it. But I remember sitting in one meeting where I was getting reviewed or whatever, and I remember talking about how proud I was of myself because whenever there's a problem, I'm very good at fixing it. And it was it was made known to me that we don't want problem fixers. We want people who prevent problems from happening in the first place, which was kind of a wide awakening. I think there's a lot of people that are good at hey, if there's a problem, we're going to fix it, but they're not so good at let's prevent this problem from happening in the first place. So everything I do in my business is all about, okay, what could we have done to prevent this problem? And what I see in the industry personally is that a lot of people love to point fingers. And I see this in just personal relationships as well. It's all about pointing fingers at somebody and trying to deflect blame. When if you ever go back in any situation, you can probably pick out one or two things you could have done differently to have avoided the outcome that you're currently dealing with. So that was one of the good things that came out of it. Some of the bad things was I definitely needed to, figure out how I could be a little bit more innovative with my business, innovative with myself. So working with some of these larger firms and, in the real estate world, whether it's, you're part of Keller Williams or you're part of, whatever, Brett Kepler Realty, the nice thing about being small is being able to turn your little boat so much faster than anyone else. And there's a huge advantage to being innovative at a smaller level and trying new things and not having to ask for permission. So, I think that everything I wanted to do when I was young and all the mistakes that I wanted to probably make early, I was able to do early because I stepped out on my own when I didn't have kids and didn't have a wife and really much concern other than myself.
Right. So you brought up a ton of good topics in there. We can talk about being nimble, and it's so interesting. Being a startup, you can be nimble, and it's so often, people look at the big incumbents, whether that's a Google or an Apple or whatever, and small startups can, they can win. Dropbox won over Google Drive, right? Because a Dropbox could be nimble. But again, sorry, I'm a little bit off topic. So one of your big takeaways was being preventative about problems, prior to them arising. To me, and I want to get your take on that, to me that says systems and processes, right? A checklist of do this, and you won't get derailed. Would you agree with that, one? And two, what are some of the core systems and processes that you've put in place to be problem preventative?
Sure. So I am a huge believer of that because in this business, and I tell people, real estate, it's really very simple. It's a matter of just doing this list of things, at these different times throughout the entire period. And the problem is, in my opinion, with agents is that you're asking people to have quite a variable background, and that at one point you're in sales, one point you're in marketing, one point you're in customer care, one point you're doing financial understanding with your clients, and you really have to wear many hats. And the reason why I think the industry is kind of behind the times and why there's so many bad stereotypes with real estate agents is because you're expecting in a lot of cases one person to do all of these things well. And even those who are independent agents, when they rely on their broker to kind of assist with things, they're not really even doing some of those things well or able to support them very well. So for those people that or those agents who are successful enough to hire an assistant who can maybe make up for where they lack in their skill set, that's extremely important. So having a person that can run your systems for you or even help you to create a system, the first thing you need to do is really just acknowledge what are you not good at doing, and then figure out a system to put in place to fix that. So whether it's, I'm terrible at reaching out to my, customers after closing, well, you need to figure out a tool, and there's plenty out there that'll just tell you each and every morning, here's who you need to talk to. And, find a way that you can be better disciplined, in doing so. So my whole business has actually become one of creating systems. And whenever you do high volume like we did, and if we have a small number of people where, I'd love to be out on the West Coast or the East Coast with an average sale price of, 4, 5, 600,000, but we're doing it with an average sale price of, 120,000, supporting a pretty large organization. So finding systems where we can have multiple people's minds all on the same page has always been a challenge. But yes, I'm a diehard believer in systems, and probably anyone you speak with who's going to be successful in this industry are probably going to say the exact same thing.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And I think, when you were discussing all the many hats that people have to wear, whether that's, sales and marketing and finance, I think the one that you left out that most people very much struggle with is management. Right. I mean, you can outsource, but it's the management piece of, hiring and being able to manage those people effectively. So, and by the way, I am in San Diego, right? So, and our average home price here, I think average is like $450 or $500, but in reality, the real average is like, $600 to $800. That's kind of the sweet spot. Do you think you being system oriented, and having a marketing background, I mean, do you think what you've built out there with Trio Realty, could you fundamentally pick up your business and move it to an LA or San Diego or Chicago, and would it work, do you think?
Sure. So actually we operate both in Cincinnati, Dayton, which is a little bit further north of Cincinnati, and Chicago. So what we did is a lot of the way that we operate our business is using cloud-based systems, using people in remote locations if necessary. That we've been able to move into markets, establish a pretty small presence, and still offer the same robust systems that are allowing us to be as successful in Cincinnati up in Chicago. What we don't have up in Chicago is the people on the ground, because it's still a people business. So if we were, though, to take people who said, yeah, I like what you're doing down there, could you bring all of your technology up here and kind of teach me to do what I'm doing? Well, sure, we can offer that. And I've actually seen kind of a rise in people going after domestic virtual assistants. That's kind of showing that this can be achieved, not with having somebody directly in the office, but you can borrow people's talents as long as they have a computer and a strong Wi-Fi connection. So I'm kind of seeing the future of the industry go that way. Hence, and it's kind of interesting that you're leading up to this, because we haven't spoke about my other venture, but my new business is all about creating systems and creating almost checklist-based systems and task-based systems to run your business, so that even those people who are the individual agent who can't afford an assistant can have something telling them what to do and when to do it and how to do it. And then whether you're a big team, it's all about, okay, how do we get transparency into the process? Yeah. So it's, I'm not just a believer in speaking of, or just in saying I'm a believer, but I'm willing to actually risk my real estate business by putting more resources into what I think is going to become a bigger component to the industry, and that's finding really good task-based systems which will help an agent of any size be more productive.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that, because I can tell you, we've had a lot of the in Keller Williams, the big deal there is expansion teams, right? And I've had a lot of the people, and by the way, like in all of Keller Williams, like 25,000 agents or whatever, there's literally a handful. I think there's like between 7 and 11 people that are actually doing this, and none of them are very big, and none of them had a big success. And by the way, I want to know some of your systems and cloud-based tools that you use, because for me in the show, we've talked recently about creating a national branded team with us doing it. So, so I mean, I don't want to lead you too much, but when you talk about those systems, whether it's the cloud-based systems or actual apps or applications, software to help somebody along, I mean, talk to us about that. Just get going. I mean, if you feel comfortable.
Well, I'll tell you where. Sure. I mean, I'll tell you where. I pretty much have an application for every component of my business, and most of the times they all speak to one another. And so we've tried Dotloop. We sort of use it, sort of don't. We tried DocuSign and their transaction room system, and that's, again, one that we use and sometimes do. If anything, we probably have multiple subscriptions to competing companies because we aren't so happy with one, or there's different advantages to the others. But, from when I first created this brokerage, which was in 2009, we were just sort of on the cusp of getting access to these third-party providers who were providing technology services on a national level that were previously only provided at a local level. So, whether it's the showing services, and those are all pretty much going cloud-based. Now they're even built into your MLS. So that's become really easy. The whole transaction management systems are now being taken out of the hands of, the largest brokerages, and those being done by third-party companies. There's not a whole lot that is necessary for a brick-and-mortar company to provide beyond, culture and community, and kind of taking an attitude of, we work as a team and we work together rather than we're all competing against one another, directly, for the leads that come into the brokerage as a whole. So, the way that we're set up is not one where we have a bunch of independent agents. And the reason why, I'm not going out there and trying to expand into markets is because, I personally don't think hiring a bunch of independent agents makes a whole lot of sense. It's unless you have very good people who are pretty much able to take care of themselves, because I personally feel an obligation to anybody who joins my company that I have to make them successful. And, so there's sort of some internal coaching that goes on that I would be more inclined to see, people who are like myself, they've been able to sell a lot of homes, saying I'm going to create my own little mini brokerage under me, rather than think of how I can duplicate myself in other markets. Because eventually it's just going to become this big hierarchy that kind of exists right now with all these different companies, where it's going to focus back on driving signups in order to support. So I don't know if necessarily, creating something that's virtual that can grow, and scale at a massive level is really going to have the same effect as, just giving those entrepreneurs who say, I want more than just being on call 24/7. I want people that I can invest in and can give me a return. I think we're probably going to see more of those little businesses pop up because the resources are there to give them the same look and feel as a large company. Just with the change that's gone on with these cloud-based companies.
Okay, so if you're going to grow your brokerage,
yeah.
You said it's about, the tools are out there, and the real meat of it is going to be culture, community, and then you alluded to unity, right? Everybody working together toward a common goal. If that's the case, what are, maybe not everybody listening to this episode right now, Brett, knows what those cloud-based systems are. Can you maybe give us a handful of them?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. So I use, some of the things that we use for just communication. We use, we actually go with showings.com. Centralized Showings is our, showing service provider that can cover all your showing needs that you might require. We already talked about our transaction-based system, so we use Dotloop and then DocuSign, to handle those. All of our paperwork is run through zip forms. So anytime there's updated paperwork, people need access to that, they can get it from there. We have an internet system that actually is run through Google. So all of our company email is done through Google. We do our Google Hangouts, so that if we do need to have meetings and people call in, we can, utilize that system for communication. We do a lot of, kind of meetings, face-to-face meetings through the applications, so that way if people can't make it, they can still get all of the information that they need. Gmail, we're very big on that. So we utilize the heck out of Gmail with all their different filters. We have our phone system through, phonebooth.com. And that's been pretty good. So we have a lot of just virtual systems. People can have their own voicemail, set up so it chases their multiple different phones. And we have all of our different auto attendants in there to kind of help, with routing calls. We use Follow Up Boss for all of our leads. So as those trickle in, we just sort of have a round robin system for anything that's team generated. And bear in mind that if someone has their own stuff, then they can get their own signage and they can drive their own leads to their own site and things of that nature. We host all of our website and our blog on WordPress, and then there's people that will contribute articles and content to help with page rankings. So we're pretty active in trying to get people to not only work in the business but also become an expert in the industry. So we really encourage people to share their knowledge, and kind of similar to if you ever read Inman, they have several different authors. We've kind of created a mini system where we really push our agents to produce content to help, just help them to rank better and get some notoriety.
Yeah.
And our site does pretty well in the Cincinnati market. So let me think what else we might use. We use MailChimp for our for our drip emails and just keeping in touch. We just finally got rid of Top Producer after 6 years of using it, but we used to use that program. We found that breaking it up and finding a bunch of different systems that could do each one of their components a little bit better, made more sense. We just weren't using it that much at all.
Well, hold on, Brett, because this is one that I think, I get this question all the time. So, obviously, Top Producer is a CRM. You used it for 6 years, and how you just explained that to me, Brett, it sounded like you don't use a standalone CRM system. How do you what do you use to? You talk to me today, and you go, "Hey, I want to talk to Toby." 3 months from now, what do you use to send you an email or whatever to say, "Hey, listen, call Toby today"?
So what we do is, instead of having there's actually two things that we use in place of that. And like I said, we've kind of taken Top Producer and dissected it, and then we went and found kind of specialty programs that I think do a better job and still can all talk to each other a little bit. So we use MailChimp for all of our mailings, and that just seemed like a better program than all the templates and all the email that came in Top Producer was just very antiquated. It looked like it was all done in the 1980s, and it just didn't have the look and feel that we were going for. So we do our emailing through that. We store all of our contacts in follow-up auth. And that's just easier, so that if someone does happen to call in, we can link it with the person who has previously worked with that client, in case they're not calling their agent back, which they should. We just kind of store everything in there. That they have a mobile app, so if I need to find a client, I can do that. And then we kind of have gone old school a little bit with our marketing. I haven't found a program out there that does, I think the best brochures and postcards and all that. I mean, there are some of these one-size-fits-all websites where they'll pump everything out. But I have found that just, getting either, some local people to design it, or I do a lot of work through Odesk and Elance, just combined into Upwork. And I'll hire out some of that to some graphic designers overseas if I want to produce any, new marketing materials we do or any new programs that we're running. I've never been satisfied with having limitations that some of these marketing programs come up with. So we usually just do custom printouts or custom, virtual postcards and things like that, and we just outsource those for the most part.
Yep.
Let's see. We use trying to think what else Top Producer would do that we're now. When it comes to the task management piece, I cannot find a good task management system. And that's why I've spent the last year and a half creating Next, which is NEKST. That's my new startup. Hold
on a second. NEKST.com?
Yeah, ST. Correct. Nextapp.com is actually what it is. NEKSTAPP.com.
Okay.
So what this kind of does is it kind of takes, if you remember Top Producer, or if you use Top Producer, it takes that the creation of tasks, and it kind of just puts that on steroids. So, it's very simple, whereas, Top Producer is kind of clunky, but then we also do kind of some innovative things, which with the way that we keep the history of a transaction, the way they can work with multiple team members, the way that it can, it actually automatically seeks out feedback from the lender and the title company, sort of similar to, as the lender schedules a showing every week on your property, they get an email every week saying, "Hey, how are we doing on this transaction? What are we waiting for? Is there any reason why we won't close?" Their answers get fed back into the system, and it kind of does follow up on behalf of the agent. So it takes all the little steps that my assistant would do, and it essentially automates the process.
Wow.
So that's kind of where, I cannot find a piece of technology that fit this one thing. And I found myself continually going over to my assistant, Sarah, and having to say, "Okay, what are you working on? Do you know you're supposed to be doing this? What did we get done yesterday? What did we not get done?" And kind of having to stay on top of the situation. And it just, and plus it was difficult because I never really knew what she was doing or not doing. So that's the whole application I developed. It's really more that it's a personal assistant for the single agent, and it's the huge transparent component piece that's missing from the teams in terms of really having an understanding what everybody's doing. So that's kind of the what I'd say is going to become, as we continue to develop, kind of the heart of how I run my business. But that's
no. This looks great, and by the way, so like managing tasks is extremely. I find that really, really challenging. Same thing that you found, and what we use here is Insightly, and I don't know if you
Sure.
So that's what we use here. I'm gonna play with this. I'm gonna play with this because you have, and for everybody, if you're driving or walking your dog right now, all the stuff will be on the show notes for Brett. But this is kind of a freemium model, so he lets you try it out, Agent Light, for free. And then you can scale up. And this episode is not. I didn't even know he did this, so I'm not selling this, guys. I'm not endorsing it. I haven't tried it out yet.
No, I didn't mean for it to go in this path either.
No, that's fine. No. I mean, look, that's what we do on the show. It just goes where we go. So look, man. You're a young guy. You're a smart guy. You have this. You've gone out and you created your own brokerage. Something that it's amazing to me. I see a lot of people that are very, very successful. They're doing 900 deals and they're still flying under the Coldwell Bank. I'm like, why aren't you going out and doing, Toby Brokerage? Why aren't you doing that? I don't get it. So, but you did it, and now you're doing this other startup. I'm intrigued. I mean, you're definitely an entrepreneur. With this next, was this just scratching your own itch, and you built it, and you go, oh, hey, listen, I can just sell this thing, or were you?
It's funny. It's a couple things, and I'll kind of give you the backstory, because I'm sure that any agent, regardless of their size, can sympathize with this. But I remember always being jealous of any company who could create either a product or some sort of online tool where it could generate money, it could work. And it's not solely based on myself performing certain actions. And in real estate, pretty much the harder I work, the more I make. The less I work, the less I make. So It's very, very much correlated with my own physical effort. So, there's always that thought that, hey, I got to come up with some sort of, good idea or some invention or something of that nature. But that's not really what led me to develop Next. I think, I was getting to the point where, I was working a lot and starting to have kids, and I kind of realized that, hey, this is not a good work-life balance that I currently have, at the moment. I got to figure out, if I ever wanted to get out of real estate, what type of exit strategy I would have. And I looked at my company, and I had a team of people, but ultimately it's like, if I was the only lawyer at a law firm, and I left, what are the odds of it continuing on without me? So there really wasn't a whole lot of money when I was, the guy at the top, and I think probably the person kind of holding everything else together. And also a lot of the systems were all built with my knowledge and just my understanding, and I had a different vision than probably most other people. So not to give myself, a bunch of credit, but I was pretty sure that if I were to ever leave or try to sell it, it would be hard for it to maintain itself without me.
Yep.
So it turned into, okay, well, what do I have to do to actually, if I ever did want to leave? Well, if I had a big brokerage with 50 to 100 agents producing X, that would be great because I could sell that and that would continue to run without me. And then I thought, okay, well, how do I attract 50 to 100, top producing agents? And I thought, well, let me create some great technology. And then as I started down the path of creating, what I thought would be great technology, I thought, what the heck am I doing trying to create great technology and then go out and hire agents? And I should just be creating technology for the entire industry. Because as I kind of went down that road, I realized, hey, there's a lot of people that are probably going to benefit from this. So I made a slight change and just thought, okay, well, let's keep the real estate thing going and let's put some people in place who can help run it. Because if anything, it's going to be important that I stay pretty in touch with the industry, so I can know what's going on. I want to feel, the problems firsthand that my own software is providing, or giving other people. And as probably over the next 10 years, I'm still going to play an active role in real estate, so I can really know my product, really know my customer, and see how things are changing. I can make sure that I build for that. So Insightly, kind of big roundabout story. Coming back to your initial question, I think Insightly does a lot of things great. I think that there's some things it doesn't do so well for real estate. it's not specific to real estate. So there's some ways where you can customize it to work in real estate, but it's also a lot more work than it should be. And I think they're kind of, all the features that they're creating helps to make you organized, but it doesn't really do the job for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, the way that we're developing next, it's all about, agents aren't going to buy it if it just makes them organized, because if they really cared about getting organized, it would have got organized probably years ago. But if we could show them that we're going to actually communicate to their clients for them, and we're going to follow up with, the other parties of the transaction for them, and, we're going to give them all these great features to where they can do even less than they normally do and still close a transaction and still look very good, then that's going to be kind of our key to getting adoption. And also figure out, how we can, show brokerages and the people making decisions, for their agents, how there's some benefit there by systematizing, their agents into getting them working better. Because we're one of the weirdest industries in that, you go to any other place and they have systems for everything. The salespeople have their systems they follow. HR has their systems. Financial people have their systems. Real estate, nothing.
Yeah. No, I agree.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. It's craziness, man. I mean, the real estate sales account for 20% of our GDP in this country.
Yeah.
But it's still stuck like in the 80s in a lot of ways. So I'm curious. I want to talk about how you are going to roll this out because, again, it's a self-interested question. But when you say your app communicates with your clients, communicates with your mortgage broker, how does it do that fundamentally?
Sure. So some of the features we have in right now, and some are going to be coming out in July when we release our next version. So, pardon if I talk about some things right now that don't exist.
Yeah, it's okay.
You can go to the site. You can see kind of what's coming up.
Yep.
But right now, when it talks about, communicating with your clients, so the same way that within real estate, we kind of do the same set of tasks. It's usually just they're squeezed in between two dates, the day you go under contract and the day you close. That same process is very repeatable. In the same way, anything that we ask our buyers to do or sellers to do is pretty much the same thing as well. It's just, let's step outside of our bodies as, agents, and let's pretend like we're a buyer. And now, what is the process that they go through? And it's the same thing pretty much every time. They just need to be told what to do and how to do it and when to do it. So the same way when you launch your plan for your own tasks to follow, you can simultaneously launch a plan for your client to follow. And then it sends them an email, invites them in, just like, Dotloop or, any of those different programs where there's some sort of interaction within a software with multiple parties. But they can have, they can get emails telling them what to do or text messages, or they can just log into the application itself, and then it'll tell them each day, if they have a task, how to complete that task, and then they can check it off just like a normal checklist. And then you can, check in on them and see kind of what they're doing. Some people will heavily engage in it. Some people won't. It just kind of depends on whether they're that, type A kind of person or not. But if for some reason you forget to tell them to transfer utilities prior to closing, the program's there reminding them of everything that you could potentially forget. So the younger generation, and I don't know if I'm part of that anymore or not. I'm 34.
Yeah, you are.
But
no,
I do know that
35. It's 18
okay.
to 35 right now.
Oh, perfect. So us in the young generation, we want transparency. We want to see what's going to be happening from, start to finish, and being able to give them a roadmap of, hey, here's everything you have to do. And then simultaneously, if they want to check in on their agent, they can see everything their agent's doing. That's a lot of value. And it's taking that burden of, communication, which sometimes falls through the cracks as soon as you go under contract, and lays it out for you right there on the system. So that's how that piece works. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no. So I think I got it. So I think that's really cool. So somebody signs a contract, and then all of a sudden, right? So I sign a contract to buy a house, for example. So as a buyer, I'm in California, so we have 7 days to, so I have my home inspection contingency, I have my funding contingency. So I sign a contract. All of a sudden, it pops up in the, I get an email. Go, okay, look, that's great. Congratulations. The next step is you need to get your house inspected. Here's the date by which you need to sign off on this contingency. And by the way, here's a list of 10 providers that we've used and had good feedback with. That's awesome, man. And the same thing.
That's all there.
Yeah. So that's really, I love that.
I think you had another question about, how do we do follow-up?
Yeah, I didn't, but go ahead.
Title? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, answer that though.
Yeah. So, another cool piece is that we're all familiar with the process of providing feedback after a showing. And I kind of alluded to this a moment ago, but just to kind of reiterate, there's the same way where if I said, okay, we're closing, our closing's in 45 days. Every 7 days, I want to send an email to the lender to say, how are we doing on the loan? Are we going to meet our closing date? Is there anything that you're waiting on? Do you see any reason why we won't close? That email can be sent out automatically by the system, just like, as if I had shown a property the night before, and I can go in, click on a link, answer my questions. It pulls back into the system. Answers are shared with everybody. So, when I talk to different agents, I've rolled this out to a few brokerages, and you ask them, how often do you follow up with the mortgage lender? They kind of respond that, well, it's the mortgage lender's job to get the loan done. Why am I being asked to follow up? And again, this goes way back to the beginning of our conversation of what are you doing to prevent fires, not just being good at putting fires out. You need to sometimes cue them to follow up. Because in the same way that you might not be following up with what's going on, they may not be following up with their processor, and there's just a huge lack of communication through the process. So if the system will ask them those questions, they check with their processor. There's an issue that if found early enough, we will know well before 2 days before closing that there's a delay, but potentially we can even make up for what could have been a week or 2 week issue, in a matter of hours because we've discovered it. So that's, if the system can do it for you and it takes the burden off the agent, I don't see anyone that wouldn't like to have that feature built into a piece of software they're using.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say a couple things, and this is for the audience. I mean, I think, if you, I think as people start off in their companies or what they're growing, their startups, selling real estate, they struggle with what system should I put in place. And I think this last 10 minutes of Brett and I talking, I think you can think about that process that somebody goes through, whether you're a buyer or seller or whatever. And, you guys should go out and start to craft these systems, right? Like this is when you should follow up. This is what that follow up should look like. If you don't want, if you're too cheap to go out and buy Brett's product. And I won't get into pricing. It's cheap. It's
not too expensive.
No. It's I think it's cheaper than I know it's half price of what Top Producer is.
Right.
And I think it's right in line with what Insightly is. Anyhow, so this is again a side topic, and we have to start wrapping up here. We got carried away, but do you see you building this out to other industries or niches, right? So your next one might be for mortgage brokers, right? I mean, you literally do. I mean, you could, like, for our radio agency, I would love to have this for what we do specifically. I mean, you could literally do it for like a food truck, right? Like, okay, hey guys, log the odometer, and it's time to, this is the typical maintenance, right? Like where nobody has to think about anything. It's just plugged in. It's automatic.
Yeah, and that's, where I want to make sure first is that the industry that I do know, which is real estate, that I can make it work. But ultimately, I tell people, this is the reason why I think no one's really been able to crack the task management piece is because so many people out there who are developers think that there's one way to sell real estate in this country, and unfortunately, there's a million ways. And whenever you try to put in what is that system going to look like, you realize it's not going to work the same in any of these cities or any of these companies. And the beauty of the software isn't in the task lists that are built in there. They're just there to kind of give you an idea, but they're really meant for you to create your own systems. And it really is there to work with how you work as opposed to the system telling you how it thinks you should work. So, only kind of coming from the industry do you have that insight to develop in that way. So at the same time, you can take the same sort of tools and same feature set, and we've had people use it for more than just listings and closings. They've used it for onboarding new hires. They've used it for marketing plans. They've used it for, there's just a whole slew of things that it's like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden when your mind starts thinking, can I build a system out of this? It can work for so many different components of your business. And, I like to say that anything that is a consumer-facing business, this is going to be able to work for. It's just a matter of changing a few words. Instead of calling it properties, it's called people, or it's called loans, or it's called weddings, or it's called anything.
Right.
You can create it. So it's there is a plan for that, but again, crawl before you walk.
Sure.
Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah. So did you outsource? I mean, were you in there writing Ajax and writing code, or did you?
No. I wish I was that
talented.
talented.
I know, me too.
I wish I was that talented.
So this was something that you did on Elance or
Actually,
Odesk?
what I do is I hired someone local.
You did,
because I know what I was doing, and I'd rather pay a lot of money for something that kind of works rather than a little bit of money for a complete piece of crap.
Right.
Which is what I knew would probably happen since I had no clue what I was doing. So fortunately, I teamed up with a great, local company, and said, give me the right foundation, help steer me in the right direction. We worked on it for about a year. And then just recently I decided that, okay, in typical startup mode, now I got to start going lean with it. Because I just recently, I think I released it maybe 6 months ago, went through an accelerator program with it.
With who?
And we're just now starting to get it. So it was with Uptech, which is one, based out of the Cincinnati region.
Okay, got it.
So not one of the, top 10, unfortunately.
Right,
but,
right.
it was still a great experience. And, just being able to kind of, take myself out of the real estate mindset and put myself into, technology startup mindset was a healthy move. For me, but I just recently switched to, some developers that are overseas that I was connected with from a friend, and that's been great because, I can actually, I think, build faster and do more for each one of my releases, and they're building on an existing framework, which makes me feel good that, okay, I have the right pieces in place.
Right.
So eventually, am I going to hire people on, to work for me and do this? Sure. Right now, I'm more in the, losing a lot of the money stage to try to get the product up to where we get product market fit. But I think I'm pretty close.
Yeah. So, okay. I'm sure you've read Eric Ries's Lean Startup. You went through an accelerated. It wasn't Y Combinator. I get that. Did you raise any money for this yet?
You know what? I've had some options for it, but I've been wrestling with that pretty significantly. It's funny that you bring this up. And this is probably going to shoot down any chance I have with any upcoming investors. But, I've become very attracted to the idea of bootstrapping the entire project. And I feel like I put so much time and money into it, and I'm so close that, maybe I'll go and raise money when I just need an accelerant at that point. But in terms of raising money at a pretty bad valuation to still perfect the product, I don't think I need to do that right now. So I'm getting back into selling some property to, in order to, kind of keep this vision of Next moving forward. But, the plan, and maybe, it's a little bit of inspiration from Basecamp and those guys over there, which is funny because it's also a task management program. I've been really connecting more with the idea of, developing something where it's about putting the customer first and rather than putting the investor first. And I've just heard so many horror stories about people that try to grow too quick and they do things more that just don't make good business sense because, the investor wants you to be dependent upon them and they want you to grow rather than build good software. So
yeah,
I think software in the industry too.
Look, dude, I've raised venture capital, man. I back in '98, I raised $7 million, and I was in Silicon Valley. And I think this is a whole different. My audience is going, Toby, I don't want to hear about VC, but I'll. So really quick. So do you have a profile on Angel.co?
I do.
Okay.
I think I threw up a bunch of profiles when I was supposed to.
Okay.
I would be more willing to partner with people within the industry. I'm getting pretty close to the point where I'm going to have to take on just some local, co-founders. Because right now I'm still kind of running with just a couple, people who are hired help, but no one who's as committed as I am. So there's going to be a lot of changes coming up, and it's going to be exciting. And I'm pretty close to the point where I'm going to start, delving out pieces of the company. But obviously, anybody that is listening that thinks that they can bring more than just money, and I'd be more than happy to speak with.
Sure. Well, I'll tell you, our rollout thing here is, we partnered with I have a very close partnership with Bob Corcoran and Corcoran Coaching, and I think if you guys,
I coached with them for like 5 years, so I know Bob pretty well. Helped his son buy a house here. And
dude, why don't you go do a deal with Tom Ferry or Mike? I don't think would do the deal, or like a Bob and just go, look, I want every coaching client, you sign up, I'm going to give them a free unlimited version of this thing, and and maybe give Bob some equity. Bob doesn't do that kind of stuff though.
Well, he has. I don't know enough about Bob to speak to him, but I know that he has. I know the products that they generally push out, and I'm sure there's some sort of back end there. But you know what? This is the other thing. I'll tell you my other weakness and what I struggle with. And fortunately, I have to keep living the mantra that if when you push it out, if you're not embarrassed by it, then you waited too long.
Yep.
Which is kind of how it works with software. And for me, I am very much I don't want to go big with it because I know that there's still things that I need to fix. There's still improvements that need to be made. I've got right now, 500 or 600 people using it, and I'm pretty happy with that beta size because I can still roll things out. I can still manage requests. Again, I'm not looking to make a ton of money right now because what I can't speed up is my developers. And there's, I'm probably about 40-50% of the way done with what I think are going to be the end features. So it's kind of timing. When's the right time to really spend the money on the marketing and really roll it out? With when do I know the product is ready?
Yeah.
So I've gotten it out there. I've gotten it in front of people. I think the timing is going to be probably at the end of the summer that I'm really going to say, okay, you know what? All the chips are in. Okay, real estate people, real estate company trio. Run the heck out of it. I'll still be here. And then my other side of the business will be, hopefully becoming a much bigger household name or, brokerage name as I roll out next.
Yeah, man, that's exciting. I think it'd be interesting to figure out a way for you to partner with with somebody who is just adjacent to you, like a bomb or something, right?
Sure.
Integrate video and this kind of whatever. So listen, we don't have time to ask you all the questions. I normally ask 3 standard questions. We don't have time to do that. I'm going to ask you the last 2. And the first one is a book recommendation, and I'm obviously interested in what a guy like you reads, and hopefully you read, man. So here's the setup: I'm an aspiring agent. I have $25. What book should I go buy today?
What book should you go buy today? What I would honestly, and this might sound really cliche, but to learn the business first in the way it should be done. I would probably read $1 Million Dollar, Million Dollar Real Estate, whatever the colorway book is. It's, the fact that you get thrown into this business brand new with absolutely no foundation on what to do, it is the best foundation book that I think I've ever read. Do I think you should follow it to a T? Absolutely not. No. Does it help pave some sort of a correct path until you can figure out what you like and what you don't like? Absolutely.
I agree.
So, yeah.
And look, for everybody, right. For everybody out there, that book comes up a lot here. And if you still haven't got it, go get it, man. And just, look, get a free copy on us. Use our Audible trial. Just go to audibletrial.com/superagentslive and get a free copy. My last question to you, Brett, is, you have a lot of things going on, man. You're managing a team. You're growing a business. You're growing this new tech startup. Do you have a personal habit that you think has contributed to your success?
I don't know if it's a habit or a fear. I think I have a huge fear that I'm going to get left behind as the industry changes. And I think I had the question recently, what kind of keeps you up at night? And I think it's not being diversified enough that I'm going to continue to catch bigger and bigger waves. So as I see myself, I'm very much driven by the need to succeed, partially because I'm a real estate agent, which doesn't have exactly the best reputation in the world. And, I come from a family where my dad was a physician. So part of me thinks, okay, am I really reaching my full potential by taking on an industry or getting into an industry where you only have to be 18 to get a license, and you can get that done in 3 or 4 weeks. So I hate the low barrier to entry.
Yep.
There's very little prestige when you tell someone you're a real estate agent. So part of it is making up for that connotation that comes with what I do, but then the other piece is as well, feeling like I need to continually grow and grow and grow. And the moment that I get tapped out with time, or the moment that I think that I am missing out on time with my family, I know that I have to become smarter with the way that I'm investing my time and investing my money. And that's what's kept me continuing to take on new challenges and not really just being complacent with what I built.
That's awesome, man. And look, I wish you definite success with Next. I hope that, I think everybody kind of wants a SaaS product in a lot of ways. I'm in the middle of building out some SaaS type stuff myself. I'd love to go to bed at night and wake up and realize, hey, man, another 40, 50, 60, 80, 100, whatever, people just signed up for my service and they're just going to write me a check, whether it's $15 or $150 a month. So look, here's the deal, Brett. I always encourage my listeners, if they've gotten anything out of this episode with you, to reach out to you and say thank you. And look, and maybe there's somebody there in Cincinnati, Ohio that says, look, I want to work with a guy like that. And I'm sure you're always on the lookout for talent. So where can people find you, Brett?
Sure. So, the best place to reach me, if it's real estate related, you can reach me at the email address Brett, BRETT, at Trio Realtors, and that's spelled TREO Realtors with an S.com. If it's something related to to Next, you can reach me at Brett, which is same, BRETT at nextapp.com, and that's spelled NEKSTAPP.com. Or if you just search, Next Real Estate with a K in the middle, you'll get to the website. You can reach me through there as well.
Yeah, and all this stuff will be on the show notes for Brett. And by the way, guys, everybody listening, Brett just gave away a little bit of a hack. If you want to reach somebody and you don't know their email address, 95% of the time, and if this person's a founder of a company, it's first name at domainname.com. So Brett's was
Correct.
Brett at Trio Realty. So that's something to keep in mind. That's how I actually got Tom Ferry on the show. It's like Tom at tomferryorg.com or whatever it is. Hey, Brett, listen, I'll be the first guy to kick off the thank you train. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate you taking. I know you're busy, got a lot going on, and you took the time out to share with me and my audience. I really appreciate it. Let's keep in touch.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. This is a great opportunity.
See you, bud.